Guess what, B? It's Saturday and it's episode 10. And guess where we're going to take these people today? In fact, you know.
I do know.
Where are we going?
You're going to Bible College.
You're going to Bible College. Yeah, it's time to waste years of your life. Let's go to Bible College.
Come on board.
Yep, come on down. Come on down to Bible College. Now, before we go to Bible College, the few things we wanted to sort of point out is that we have started negotiations. We've started conversations with others. We're going to have guests on the show.
We are. In probably the next few weeks. Yeah. We can't say exactly when because we've still got to work out some time frames, but we will be interviewing people. And
one in particular, we're going to have Anthony Van Brown.
Yes.
Former Great Big AOG. Well, not our Great Big AOG, but a Great Big AOG pastor.
Yes.
Who is now an advocate and ambassador for LGBTQ plus community around religion and other things as well.
Yes, and you may have remembered from maybe episode 2 or 3, I can't remember, that Anthony came up when we spoke about... he used to preach against Star Wars, which
and the Muppets.
Me. And the Muppets.
Did I mention that one?
No.
Yeah, he actually said the Rainbow Connection by Kermit the Frog was actually a New Age ploy or a New Age tactic or whatever it was. Yeah. So, the Muppets too.
Look, in fairness, possibly was, but that's okay. That's fine.
But he's grown.
Yeah.
He's grown. No, not Kermit.
No.
I mean, Anthony Van Brown. And so he's quite an amazing guy. So he's going to come on and be interviewed. We've got some other people lined up as well, but we won't mention them by name yet until we've secured the deal.
That's right. So, no, it's exciting times. There's no doubt.
And one of the other things we wanted to ask people to do is remember to rate the podcast on your favourite platform and share the podcast. And what we'd like you to do is if you're involved in any Facebook groups or Reddit chats or anything at all, post our the link to our podcast in there and let people know that we exist, because we just want more people to listen because we're narcissists.
Yeah, well, speak for yourself. But
okay, and I'm a narcissist.
No, we just want to share our journey, and maybe there is a bit of narcissism. Who knows?
Yeah,
let's do it. Let's do it.
Possibly, but I think it's also really good therapy. I mean, last week did my head in.
Yeah. It's the therapy side of it. I was actually saying to my partner before I came tonight that it's brought up more shit for me than it should have, or could have, or would have, or I could have even guessed.
Look, I really took over last week, so let's start with you and tell us all about your journey in Bible College, why you went and who was there and what was it like?
You had a right to take over last week because it was about
because it was called Team Leader.
Yeah, that's exactly. Right. Yeah. So, in all fairness, if I had it would have been called B Leaves or Revival Centre, and it wouldn't have been true.
Yeah, well, that's right, and also Tea Leaves.
Tea Leaves. I like it.
Do you like that? Yeah,
that's good.
Tell me about why you went to Bible College in the first place. Did you leave your job to go to Bible College? Is that what you did, or did you work part time? Yeah, okay. So tell me, because it's a big call, right? To go and study Jesus full time.
Absolutely,
it's a big deal.
It was enormous, and it was a fairly significh financial sacrifice as well. I can't remember how old I was actually, to be honest. Maybe 20-ish. Maybe 21. So relatively new in the faith, I guess, if you look at it that way. For me, it was... Oh, no, actually, I was about 22, 23. So it's a few
still
years
relatively new to life.
Yeah, still relatively new to life. For me, it was... I went to one that was associated with a Great Big AOG. It was
run out of our Great Big AOG. It was. Yeah.
It was an annex.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, it's a relatively new one, and so they brought in, it was a bit of a hybrid model. Like, they brought in quite a few different sort of areas that they got teachers from, or preachers, whatever, and so it was quite eclectic, and I'm sure that we'll compare as we go on through this episode, but for me, the reason I went was, it was the next step for me. I guess if I was to say I was groomed for that next step in leadership, that would probably be correct. So I've said before that I was quite often recognised for leadership, and people would say you really should lead this, or you should take this on or that on. I quite often pushed back on it, but I got to that point where I thought maybe this is the next step. Maybe I need to... There was a lot of professional ministers, professional pastors around our scene. They were people by and large, that I looked up to.
And they wore suits a lot, didn't they?
They did wear suits.
Suits and ties.
Quite nice suits too.
Often.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Some were a bit rubbish, but they were quite good, and they were lovely people, and quite often you would see their lives as successful, and that's what I wanted. And it was interesting; they all lived in the nice suburbs of the city.
I remember you said they lived in McMansions.
They did live in McMansions. They all looked the same.
Yeah. You know what's interesting as well? I think it sort of shows the American influence that it's Bible college.
Yeah.
It's not Bible University.
No.
And I wish they'd called it that.
Yeah.
Because then I could have said to people, I went to Bible University.
Yeah.
Right? Or we didn't call it theological college. That was very British, I think, to say
Yes.
theological college. Instead, it was Bible college. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, it probably suited with that theatre of Pentecostalism, no doubt. But, so for me, it was something that I did. I gave up my job. I gave up full-time work. I was a tradesperson.
Yep.
So for me, it was giving up secure work, reasonably well-paid work, and leaping into, I was always told, just jump off the cliff, have faith.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I got into debt. So I definitely did go, because it was all pay up front fees. You couldn't get in Australia a thing called, at the time, HECS, Higher Education Contribution Scheme.
And there was no Austudy?
It was interesting. So we got Austudy.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
I think we were the first, maybe 93, 94.
Okay.
I think it was. Okay. Definitely not 95. There was another time point in my life. Something else happened in 95. Then I know it was before that. So
because you were at that Bible college with my now ex-wife, who was then my girlfriend.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
so I knew about this Bible college.
Yeah, so look, there was it wasn't huge. There was a few people that went part-time, but a lot of people went full-time. There was maybe 15 or 20 full-time, maybe another dozen or so that were part-time. So, and most of the people we knew reasonably well. Most people were from Great Big AOG. There were a few people that came from the outside, I guess, and
lesser known AOG,
and they and I think there was one or two not even from AOG.
Wow!
So it would have been quite confronting for them, I would imagine.
Yeah.
However, I don't think that it was an AOG Bible college, but it wasn't overly AOG because it had a bit of an eclectic mix of different teachers there. And certainly there was a couple of them which were completely contrary to each other. There was one that was quite... He definitely in that space was considered quite liberal and progressive.
But wasn't really, right?
But wasn't
or
really.
Was.
But if you compared it,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, relative to what was going on at Great Big AOG, he was liberal and progressive. But outside of that, he was like, there was no evolution and he was still hardcore.
Well, yeah.
Looking back now.
Yeah, looking back now, definitely. But he was quite controversial
yes.
In that space.
Yeah,
and there was... and I really took to him. Like, he was... Because for me...
I think your whole cohort did, because I can remember my then girlfriend talking about what was going on, coming home, and you guys were all gushing about this one lecturer, this one teacher.
Well, because it was the bit that made it, I guess, feel and taste and smell progressive was he wasn't saying this is truth and this is not. What he was saying is this is truth. But there's another version of that truth. There's not. It was a little bit postmodern in that there was definitely one definitive truth, and that was Jesus was God, Trinity, all that sort of stuff. Absolutely,
salvation by faith, Reformation, yada yada. Yeah,
but there was lots of other stuff around the way you could interpret the Bible. He talked about context of the Bible, something you didn't usually hear because it was
God's word, and you can take verses out of context. Doesn't matter, still God's word.
Absolutely,
and that's the way it was.
So he spoke a lot about context. There was another guy there that he used to be a professional muso, and he was also another one of the teachers there. And he was, even though he was relatively conservative, his style allowed you to question. and he would never shut you down. So I felt like
Was he attending Great Big AOG, both these guys, or were they from other churches?
One was attending Great Big AOG, one wasn't.
Okay.
One had just come back into Great Big AOG after spending a lot of time in the Baptist space and other churches that weren't Pentecostal, but had come back into the Pentecostal space and had grown up there in his faith in his earlier years.
That's interesting.
So, I felt like in that way, I was fortunate. I was exposed to that, and I guess from what we've spoken about before, that was quite different to your experience.
Yes, again, you told this story that sounds really nice. I wish I had lived your life. Before Great Big AOG started their own Bible college, there was another Bible college that was in our city, was pretty much the AOG place that you went. It was in a less affluent suburb, and so the clientele was of the church that auspiced it, and also the people that went there it was a different breed, right? Yeah. But this one was very much about here's what other people say, and here's the truth.
Yeah.
Like we're looking at salvation, here's what this denomination says, and here's the truth. Okay. Speaking in tongues, here's what this group has said, and here's the truth. And so we were definitely not given what sounds to me like you were given at least a little bit of flexibility around, what do we choose to believe, except on really non-essential issues like other denominations would say this was essential, but things like, Calvinism versus Arminianism, which is the idea of, are you predestined to be saved or do you have free will? And we'd have debates around that, and it was all very exciting.
Yeah.
But the core tenets of AOG doctrine, no. There was no presentation of opposing views other than, and here's the wrong views. It's like, speaking in tongues, initial evidence of the baptism of the Holy Spirit, there it is, and here's the wrong views.
Yeah.
So it was very, very different to that. So we had subjects like creation versus evolution. Okay. Which I could tell you from the start, creation wins that battle. And we had, people from, Christian scientists, not Christian scientists, but scientists who were Christian, coming in and telling us all about why, as a scientist, I completely reject evolution. Creation is the true story. So mine was very, very different to yours. Yeah. But I joined for different reasons. Yeah. I joined Bible college because I wanted to know. That's what it really came down to.
You're a seeker of the truth.
Yeah, very much so. And lucky I went there because that's where it was. But a thirst for knowledge. Yeah. And remembering I'd come out of the revival centre. Right. Let's not talk about them, but I came out of the revival centre, which had told me all this stuff to be true. I wanted to actually find out. They were wrong. So what is true? Yeah. And so I went there really to find that out. Okay. And so the whole idea of becoming a professional pastor and all that, that didn't creep in until later. It certainly did creep in later. Yeah. But that wasn't my intention for going there. Yeah. And so when you guys started going to that Bible college, I was like, ooh, wish I'd gone there. Because it sounded like you guys were having a much better time and a much freer time.
Yeah, look, I think if I was to say that, you were allowed to pick your own truth, that wouldn't be accurate. I mean, there was definitely a truth and a preferred truth that you were steered towards as a whole for that Bible college.
So what would they be? Things like divinity of Christ, Trinity, salvation by faith?
All that sort of stuff, but also, lots of, like you had a whole subject on the Holy Spirit and
of course you did.
Speaking in tongues and, all that sort of stuff. So they were non-negotiables. Yeah. I mean, you would hear quite often, not within the Bible college, but within the scene, that if someone didn't speak in tongues, they just weren't as spiritual and they didn't have the Holy Spirit, which was just bizarre. Even back then, I used to think that's just weird.
Well, I came from a revival centre. No, that wasn't weird at all. That's the way it was, brother.
Yeah, well, you did have the truth. So yeah, I think there was definitely a truth, and it wasn't that liberal space where you could definitely walk away and go, I will think completely differently and I would act completely differently. You had to be anchored.
Of course, and if you didn't, you wouldn't be in there, to be honest. So tell me what a day in Great Big AOG's Bible College looked like. You'd arrive in the morning,
It was a while ago.
Baptising? What would you do? How would it start?
We'd start by preaching. No, we'd start with chapel.
You did start by preaching.
We did.
Yeah.
It was chapel.
Yep.
So chapel was, you would take in turns, and it was all about learning the craft. I think also. So it wasn't just about indoctrinating each other. It was about learning the craft of how do you lead praise and worship, and
Were you allowed to lead? Remember we talked about not being allowed to lead the slow songs, the worship.
No, we could do it.
You could do it because
it was student led.
Right, because it was a safe container.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
It was. So you would do that. You would. Someone would deliver a message, and again, it was shared amongst the.
So you're using
students.
Christianese? Did you hear yourself? Someone would deliver a message.
Yes.
What do you mean for our non-Christian listeners?
They would preach.
They would preach from the Bible.
Yeah, it was about 15 minutes. Generally, you were given, and it was to preach a message of hope and love, and usually judgment.
Yes, that's about to say. Hope and love and fucking condemnation.
Yeah, pretty much. It was. There was a lot of guilt. And there would be lots of classes, I guess, broken up today. A little bit like going to university in that
Except you didn't quite think for yourself.
You didn't
Not
think...
quite like university.
No,
because
that's
it was
right.
Bible college.
It wasn't that independent. But it was... there was lots of different classes, I guess. There was prayer meetings as part of the...
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you'd have practice prayer meetings?
Yeah, I can't even remember.
Well, Pentecostal prayer meetings, remember, they were loud affairs.
Oh, they were very loud.
None of this Anglican silence, meditative, mystical shit. No, it was, Jesus, come down now,
And that wasn't me. And I remember getting pulled up a couple of times. People are going, "Are you actually leading this prayer meeting today?" I go, "Yeah."
Because you weren't loud enough.
Because I wasn't loud enough. And I, at a slight side note, I got involved in a church much later that actually used times of meditation and contemplation as their prayer, and I connected with it so much better. So it was what was missing for me back then. But yeah, there'd be lots of that sort of very structured. You would also, it was almost, you felt like you were being immersed amongst, because ours was embedded within a church as an annex. We had a lot of access to those full-time ministers who were on staff there, and you would have lunch with them. You would you would play table tennis with them. They all loved table tennis.
Yeah.
It was all
that was the big thing they did at lunchtime, wasn't it? They'd all come down. I would imagine if you were one of those younger pastors and you didn't go and play table tennis, I reckon that'd be a career-ending move.
Oh, you'd probably go to hell too.
Yeah.
But I to this day I have not played a couple of table tennis players better than a couple of them.
They were pretty good, weren't they?
Oh, they were brilliant. Yeah.
Because they did nothing all day but play table tennis. It's like working for Google or something.
That's right.
Pool tables and table tennis.
It is like an early Google when you think about it. They probably had slides into their offices.
What do you mean by early Google? You mean they knew everything about you and were seeking to control you with the information that they... anyway.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. How about you? A day in the life of yours?
Yeah, very similar. Started off with chapel. We used to go 4 half days a week.
Yes.
And then ours started off with no accreditation. Then it got TAFE level, tertiary and further education.
Okay.
And then later it got degree level.
Yeah.
So when I started, it was nothing. You used to have to pay $40 a week. And they let us go on a payment plan, right?
Okay.
So it's funny that you talk about, you ended up in debt and all that kind of stuff. I had, financial sacrifice. I had nothing.
Yeah.
So it was never a financial sacrifice. And I lived by faith, brother. So, and largely that was mum paying the fees.
Oh,
that's how I lived by faith.
Your mum's name Faith.
Yeah, well, and ironically, of course, living by faith, Dad had a job and was paying for everything. But that's how I lived by faith. But yeah, we'd have the chapel and the songs, and you'd get on a roster, and it was your turn to preach, and it was a drag a lot of the time, to be honest. They'd get AOG and similar sort of denomination people coming in, but largely it was AOG.
Yeah.
Whether lecturers or whether students, we were largely all in the AOG. But it was all those sort of satellite AOGs. Yep. Some of them were quite big.
Yeah,
in fact, the one that was auspicing this was comparable to Great Big AOG in terms of size. Yeah. But yeah, people would come from all around. People would come from overseas.
Wow.
From other AOGs, outside of Australia, they would come. It was quite big. I remember I made really good friends with this guy from Kenya who was just hilarious.
Yeah.
But he was involved in the Uniting Church because he was Presbyterian back in his home country. Came to the Uniting Church, and Uniting Church for us was like, oh, they were super liberal.
Oh, yeah.
Yet he was more fundamentalist than any of us.
Wow.
Because he was from Africa, which, as we know, still to this day, there's a lot of really, harsh fundamentalism going on over there. But yeah, met some guys and girls from around the world, and we had a library, and it was great. I had a really good time some of the time.
Yeah.
But when I started challenging, especially towards the end, I was in third year. By that time, they'd got degree status, and I wanted my degree, so I was hanging in there to finish a degree, which, by the way, I don't put on my LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
I have no. It's like I just don't have an undergrad as far as LinkedIn, even though I've got 4 postgrad degrees. Yeah. I just don't mention it.
Did you use some of the subjects for credits, though, in your university degree?
No, but what I did was I ended up going to a secular university, and you're going to laugh at this because, so much for not talking about this. I actually did a graduate diploma with a research component on the Revival Centre. Oh. And so I took my Bible college background, and when I applied, I didn't get in. So I went and saw the lecturers and the student managers and explained to them what I wanted to do, and they let me in to this secular university, and they said, we don't want you to come in and just look for our rubber stamp on what you think you know. We want you to really research.
Okay.
And so I did. Ironically, 4 years of Bible college pretty much came tumbling down in 1 year because they made me do some subjects.
Because you were doing free thinking.
That's right. I was doing hermeneutics, church history, and other things, and it was just and some sociology of religion, and it was just like, turns out this is all shit, and it all came crumbling down.
Yeah. So I got some credits from Bible college towards my secular degree.
Wow. So what subjects did you get credits for in a secular degree? Actually, angels and demons?
Yes. No, I actually can't remember.
Counselling?
Because we did anthropology as a subject as well. So
yours had a much higher level, I think, than ours.
Yes, well,
you didn't do creation versus evolution.
We didn't. We did. Some of ours were through the Australian College of Theology, which was an Anglican-based. So it was interesting. So here we are in AOG Bible College doing some Anglican Bible College subjects. So there was different accreditation. I did. I got some credits. It was 2 or 3 subjects I got credits for. So it wasn't all wasted. But also for me, I think it helped me. Because I wasn't a great student in high school, it helped me set some positive patterns for studying as I decided to go back to university in my 20s to qualify in the area I work now. So, look, it wasn't wasted for me, and I wasn't there as long as you. I was only there a bit over a year. I ended up leaving, and I said I was going to take leave and I was going to come back. And I think I had intention at the time to come back, but then I went and got married. So
I think what it did for me was it actually gave me a very strong valuing of the written word.
Yeah.
And I started it's going to sound really cliched, but really a love affair with books.
Yeah.
And with study. And even though a lot of it was, as the French would say, garbage, when I, later on in my third year, I actually started visiting other Bible college libraries. Okay. And I started reading Luther and Calvin and, some of these reformers, which wasn't on the syllabus.
No.
And I started writing these papers and arguing stuff. And that was at the AOG Bible College.
Okay.
So I think too, in the same way that you're saying it did good things for you, it did the same thing for me. Yep. It gave me that sort of basic love of books and love of reading and love of learning, but also helped me to learn to write.
Yeah.
And so, when I went to the secular university, I did okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of my time there.
Did you feel, when you're part of it, that you were superior to others in the church that you went to because you were studying this stuff full time and you were immersed in it?
No, to be honest, no. I think I thought it was a superior path.
Yep.
But that didn't make me more superior.
Yeah.
Because I thought people had different journeys.
Yep.
But I did think that everyone should be on this path.
Yes. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And anyone that wasn't was, what are you doing with your life kind of thing. But no, it didn't come back into a sort of, I'm better than you because I go to Bible college.
Yeah.
Not at all.
No.
What about you? Go on, say yes.
No, I don't think similar to you, I don't think I felt like I was better. I felt like I was on the path I was meant to be on because I needed to professionalise myself as a minister. But I think I probably felt more enlightened. I felt like I had access to some more truth because I wasn't just going to church on Sunday or youth group on a weekend. I was immersed in this stuff full time. But I think you also got treated differently by the full-time ministers, the pastors, the youth leaders, because you were at Bible college.
Yeah.
There was a bit more entrusted in you.
Yeah, you were like interns or apprentices. You were seen like that, weren't you?
Yeah. You were expected to soak it up like a sponge and enact the stuff that you had learned there and practice it, essentially. So
some of the people I went to Bible college with, some of them have stayed in the scene, in the sort of AOG Pentecostal scene, and some haven't.
Yeah.
And one in particular is doing his PhD at a secular university after having done his law degree. Another person that I was hanging around with is now a magistrate in a state court in one of the states of Australia. And, that person did the same thing, did the Bible college thing and then went off and did other university degrees. Yeah. So there was a lot of very smart people there. And there was a lot of people with a lot of potential as well. And I mean, without sounding too narcissistic, we've done okay too. We've stepped out and we've both got, decent careers and families and all that kind of stuff. Okay, there's some broken marriages behind us. But
there's a divorce behind us, but that's okay.
It is okay. That's another episode, I think. By the way.
Yes, I think it needs to be.
Yeah, but, we certainly took what they gave us at that point. But why did you stop? Because you didn't finish.
No, I didn't finish. For me, it was very much, I didn't like living in poverty.
See, I didn't mind because it's all I'd known for all these years.
Yes, so for me, I wasn't a big fan of it. I was also getting married that next year, and it had been suggested that many people had continued to go in Bible college while they got married, and I said, well, I wasn't prepared to do that, so I would take a year's break.
How did that get received?
Not well.
No.
It was...
Because that doesn't show a lot of Pentecostal faith, brother.
No. And there's plenty of other stories where I got judged for not having the Pentecostal faith, brother. I can tell you that. But that... look, it wasn't received well, and for me, it was probably the beginning of the end for me of leaving as well, and not leaving the whole church, but leaving to and I think I've spoken about this before, to another went to a Baptist church where it was a very different scene, and it definitely didn't have that fundamentalist flavour, and I was very heavily judged for that. But that probably happened 6 or 8 months after I left this Bible college. So.
Okay, so leaving the Bible college was actually a first step out of Great Big AOG.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if the two were that closely associated, but maybe they were.
Were you married by then?
By the time I left...
Left Great Big AOG?
I left around the same time. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we left just after we got married, actually.
Yeah.
I think we...
Yeah, because the pastor of Great Big AOG married you.
Yeah.
Or one of them.
So I think we rode that out.
Okay.
We knew that we were on the way out. We'd actually been looking at other places. I think we went to other places with you at that time. Yes.
But so that's because what you were a spiritual oncer and a pew warmer.
I was conflicted
right.
in a lot that I was doing in leaving too, because it's like, oh, you can't leave. And, I'd spoken to people. There's a few people I'd said, look, it's just not sitting with me. Well, wasn't many people that really received that well. But there were some had already moved on and gone. It wasn't a leaving a cult like you leaving the revival centre, but for me it was leaving and trying to find somewhere that I fit, that I wasn't being told what I had to do, who I had to be, because I think as much as I did do that for a while and accepted that and tried to be steered along, it just didn't sit well with me.
See, I graduated
from
Bible college with a degree, but they actually accelerated me because it's a 3-year program and I'd been there for 4 years. I'd come and go. I'd do a subject and then I'd disappear for a while. Then I'd come back and do 3 subjects and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they actually accelerated my program in the end and said, do this, do that, and we'll, and it's not that they cut corners, but they hurried me out of there.
Yeah.
And by that stage, I was actually getting quite bitter
Yeah.
about the whole AOG experience because by the time I left the Bible college, I had already left Great Big AOG and I was attending Baptist churches of Christ, and I'd started to dabble with what I now call the evangelical left in the city where we were. So it was very much a focus on the poor and a focus on acceptance and being authentic, yet at the same time very much authentically evangelical.
Yes.
So still, salvation by faith and all the things that the Pentecostals were about too, but just not so much about tongues and loud music and
you were on your way out.
Easily. Oh,
basically.
totally. Yeah. That's why I was listening to Oasis, remember?
That's right, yes.
Have you heard that album? It's a good album.
It's a fantastic album.
It's a good album.
So, well, here we are at the end.
At the end of Bible college.
End of Bible college.
That went so much quicker that time.
That
Bible
was
college.
Accelerated more than your course, I think.
It was indeed. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. It was good times. We left out lots of detail, obviously. There's lots more stories in there. I don't remember all of them. I don't think I was traumatised by it, but I think my memory is getting quite ordinary, to be honest. Yeah. But I quite often, after we talk about some of these things, I quite often go home and then I think about things that we spoke about. I go, should have said that. I don't remember this. It prompts. So, anyway, it comes up.
We'll just record it again another day.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll just have a part 2.
Yeah.
Bible college again. No, actually, to be honest, I don't think I want to.
We don't need
fuck
to.
Bible college.
No, we're done. We're done. We've left. We've graduated. I just threw my cap in the air.
Bible
See you
college.
later.
I didn't go to university to talk about fucking Bible college. All right, very good, V. That was lovely.
It was good. So that is it. That rounds out episode 10. What a lovely round.
That's
number.
amazing. Yeah.
10.
So please share this. Don't forget, throw it on your social media groups and all that kind of thing. Get it out. That would be great.
Get it out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
See you next week.
Ciao, everyone.